inspiration for this exhibit was that this is the 25th anniversary of the Polar Archival Program. So we decided that that would be an appropriate reason to pull together an exhibit that celebrates the Polar Archives, but also points up the differences between what it was like to do research in historical times versus what it's like to conduct field research now. There are three of us who curated this exhibit. Myself as the Polar Curator for the Archival Program, Lynn Lay, who's the librarian at the Goldthwait Polar Library, and Jason Cervenek, who's the Education Outreach Director at Byrd Polar. And all three of us brought something different to the table. My role as Polar Curator allowed me to choose the historical artifacts that I thought we should show, things that people hadn't seen before. Lynn brought to the table her knowledge of the Byrd Center and its history. Lynn's been an employee at the Byrd Center for a long time and has known pretty much all of the people represented by this exhibit, current and contemporary scientists. Jason's role as Education Outreach Coordinator made him uniquely qualified to help us with the more interactive components of the exhibit. And so his ideas for the game and for the tent, for the rocks, all things that are very different in a library exhibit.
I think was making it as interactive as possible. We wanted people that came in, specifically families, children, young adults, to be able to pick up stuff, put on the polar gear, get into the tent, go ahead and look at some of the rock samples from Antarctica, and make it something where you weren't felt that you were behind a barrier, behind glass the entire time. So our team spent a lot of time focusing on that. The other facet was the trivia, the game that people would experience when they came into the exhibit. Each person is asked to pick up a character card, and that character card has a color on it. And the color corresponds to various clues scattered throughout the exhibit. So as you go through and you look at the various items, you can get hints at whose character or which ice explorers, we called them, you're portraying. And when you get to the end of the game, there's a board where you can determine if you have chosen the ice explorer whose life you've been learning about as you go through the exhibit. And so both that and the interactive aspect was a way to make it an exhibit we hope would be memorable and also allow people to have more fun and not just feel as though they could look at things behind glass.
The Byrd Center people, the PIs, principal investigators, and the graduate students that go on expeditions continually take photographs and video for their expeditions. We're lucky that they actually put them on a hard drive for us to look at and pick and choose what we like the best. In this case, we gave Pam McClung, the graphic artist at the libraries, groups of pictures, and she got to pick which one she thought would be the most dramatic, the best that illustrate what we're trying to achieve here in the exhibit. We used some that actually were themed, some historic pictures that went along with modern day photographs of people in the fields, eating, waiting, using equipment, and in one case, hauling ice cores up a mountain or down a mountain. I don't know where they were, but we were able to, through their generosity, to pick which ones we liked the best, ask for their permission to use them, and then we blew them up, or Pam blew them up and made the banners for us. We moved into the new home of the Byrd Polar Research Center in 1992 in Scott Hall. We had boxes and boxes of books that belonged to the Rear Admiral. The archives didn't want them because they weren't necessarily polar adventures. They were what he actually used in his lifetime, or books that he took with him to the South Pole or to Little America. This box was left over. The archives didn't want it, and I'm like, wait, it says books, so I will keep this box. And it sat in our library since 1992, and we've used it for display, but this is an original box, probably from Antarctica, that he brought his books home to him in Boston, Massachusetts. For the exhibit, I chose books that had something to do with the exhibit. In this case, Thin Ice is a book about Lonnie Thompson's expeditions in the high mountains. I picked a book about Admiral Byrd and Igloo, a brand new book about the adventures of the dog. And the Antarctic book of cooking and cleaning, which everybody should read if they need to go there to make food. And along with that, polar classics like Richard Byrd's Little America. I'm hoping by having these here, people could look at them and not walk away with them, but maybe write down the titles and decide they want to read that at a later date. All of these books are available in the library system in OSU libraries.
So serendipity always plays a role, and when we had this exhibit, a few chance events happened that allowed us to have bonus features, and one of them was Pam Theodotou produced the Byrd 1933 video that aired in the Wexner Center. It premiered the same time the exhibit was open. We had Terry Tickhill, who was one of the members of the first female team to Antarctica, and she was here to give a talk during the exhibition. We also ended up getting permission to put an ice core on display. And even though our team regularly takes tours through the Byrd Polar and Climate Research Center for tours, a lot of times ice cores aren't placed out for individuals to see, just because many of them are used for research and there's concerns about bringing them out. We were lucky with this exhibit that the team was going to be in China at the same time collecting an ice core from the same region where this core had been taken in 1992. It's from the Galia Glacier in China. And since the team was there collecting another sample, we had permission to put this in the exhibit. It gives people an opportunity to see some of the annual layers, to see some of the gas bubbles within the ice. You can see a dust layer that's deposited in the early 1800s. So it's a really good example of an ice core where individuals can visually see some of the features that researchers are looking for in the ice. We also had rocks from the Polar Rock Repository. OSU has the National Science Foundation facility that houses all the rock samples brought back from the Arctic and Antarctic. We had 5 of them we chose that we thought were very unique to put on display, and it allowed, there's trivia there so individuals can try to match up the description with the specific sample. Things like ventifacts, which are very unique to the dry valleys of Antarctica, rocks that are polished by the wind and by sediment that's picked up and blasted against them. We put out 2 different fossils, so people are able to pick those up, take a look at them. It's only a small part of the 33,000 samples that we have in stock. We also had a lot of scientific, more than we had space for, scientific gear we wanted to feature. Sun compass that Admiral Byrd used in Antarctica. We had a snow sampling kit, which ironically is still the same method that's used today to look at snow density. So we also featured a video that was taken in the field just months before this exhibit opened at the UC using this equipment in one of the videos that we captured in time lapse from there. We also had a GPS rover that one of the teams allowed us to use. It's actually not that old of a piece of equipment, but it's considered old technology now. And they deployed a lot of these using helicopters on glaciers. So in addition to having that here, there was also a video that was shot with a GoPro camera on that helicopter. And as part of this exhibit, we were able to use a lot of the video, a lot of the photographs that teams had collected. It's relatively easy by today's standards. The cameras have a lot of memory capacity. They're very light, they're very rugged. The batteries work in cold conditions. And you can compare that to some of the older pieces of film and photographs that we have, where the cameras are quite large, very heavy, and in fact one of the display cases we put the glass images, the negatives that were taken of those photos, and you realize how difficult it is to get the images, and even if you had gotten them, getting them home was another challenge.
The penguin Little Mo is an Adelie penguin that actually died en route from Antarctica on Byrd's 3rd expedition, 1939 to 41. And he was kept by expedition member Tony Morency, who had him stuffed upon arrival back into the United States. And he was a family heirloom of the Morency family up until the last couple of years, when his daughter, Tony's daughter, Virginia Rich, donated the penguin to the Polar Archives. And when she donated him, I asked her what his name was, and she said, we never named him. And so we took that opportunity to try to get some interaction on Facebook with some of our followers, and we had a naming contest. But one of the names that was submitted was Little Mo, and that was the nickname Byrd used for Tony Morency on the expedition. By and large, Little Mo was the winner, so that's Little Mo. The gloves and the mittens in this case were donated by the family of Ashley Snow, and again, it's kind of a theme. Everything is from the U.S. Antarctic Service expedition. Ashley Snow was on that expedition as well, and these are also a recent donation to the Polar Archival Program. In fact, the gloves and the mittens were donated in 2015, so probably one of the most current items that we are displaying. One of my most favorite things is the Byrd Antarctic Expedition flag, but I think it's an amazing artifact, and when you compare it to the images of that flag during the expedition, you can see that our flag's been mended at some point. Down in that lower right-hand corner, you can see that patch that's clearly an add-on. And the other thing about our flag, different than the image, is that at some point a second plane was embroidered on that lower part, and we don't know when that happened either. But it's a pretty amazing artifact. These two items here, the fur and the flight suit and the mucklucks, all belong to Admiral Byrd, and those objects date to about the 1920s. And the fur is caribou trimmed in wolverine. The fur around the hood is wolverine. The flight suit is Byrd's also, and the thing to point out about the flight suit is this electrical cord which plugged in and apparently generated some kind of heat on board the aircraft, which were very cold at the time. And we don't, again, often have an opportunity to show something that's this big. So it's great for people to see the items that Byrd actually wore.